a Sports Catastrophe special presentation. Hey there, Heather, it's Jeff Cutter and welcome you to a Sports Catastrophe special presentation, as there is no birthday slash on this on this day that I have not covered. Last January 24th, I talked about the Saints Vikings in that NFC title game, which Favre stupidly decided to pass instead of run, which would have given Minnesota a better field goal attempt to beat the Saints in the Super Bowl, to get to the Super Bowl, and also talk about Luis Suarez, I think. Was I right? Yeah, Luis Suarez. But regardless of that, because there is no birthday boy or on this day today, it's a dead day. But I decided to put it in a Sports Catastrophe special presentation for one main reason. And as you can see on the screen, the logo is the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. And no, I'm not going to talk about how COVID is affecting it. I am going to talk at length today about the Winter Olympics and all that. And talk about each Winter Olympic event from 1924 till this year, and even for the next two coming up. The 2026 and the 2030 and 2034 Olympics. But regardless, let's talk about it. The Winter Olympic Games was first held in 1924 in Chamonix, France. I always mispronounce the name, but I finally found out how to pronounce it. The Summer Games had happened since 1896 and all that. The original 5 winter sports were bobsled, curling, ice hockey, Nordic skiing, and skating. Well, skiing consisted of military patrol, cross-country skiing, Nordic combined, and ski jumping. And skating was figure skating and speed skating. And the games were held every 4 years except for 1940 and 1944 because they were interrupted by World War II. They came back in 48. And until 1992, each time the Olympics happened, the Winter and Summer Games were in the same year. However, they decided after 92 to have it every 2 years. So Winter went in 94. The next Winter Games was supposed to be 96, but they put Winter in 94 and then Summer in 96. So 2-year cycles, all that. Those Winter Games have evolved since its inception. Lots of sports and disciplines have been added. Alpine skiing, luge, short track speed skiing, freestyle skiing, skeleton, and snowboarding, among others. Curling and bobsled had been discontinued and reintroduced, and all that. And a lot of people, military patrol was disbanded, but biathlon was coming from it. So anyway, the rise of TV as global media communication enhanced the profile of the games. All that. There have been lots of scandals in the Winter Olympics, unfortunately. The Winter Olympic Games have been hosted on 3 continents: North America, Europe, and Asia. South America is hard to do because, it's south of the equator. So is Africa. Australia could if they wanted to, but no. So anyway, the United States have had 4 Winter Olympics: 32, 60, 80, and 2002. Well, 19. 3 times in France, the first time 1924, when all was on the century mark of this. 1968 and 1992. And Austria, Canada, Japan, Italy, Norway, and Switzerland have hosted it twice themselves. So anyway, 12 countries have been to every Winter Olympic Games: Austria, Canada, Finland, France, Great Britain, Hungary, Italy, Norway, Poland, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United States. And 6 of those countries have won medals at every Winter Olympic Games. At least one: Austria, Canada, Finland, Norway, Sweden, and the United States. Right, Switzerland never did that. But the U.S. has won a gold medal at every Olympic Games. Canada fumbled in 1988, if memory serves me right. But anyway, Norway leads the all-time Olympic medals and all that. But when including defunct states, Germany, that had the West and East Germany, would lead, followed by Norway, Russia, including the former Soviet Union, the United States, which is funny. But anyway, the start of the Winter Games kind of came with an idea from the Nordic Games, a predecessor, which was held for many years to deal with like the three Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Anyway. So funny as it was, the 1920 Summer Games in Antwerp actually had featured figure skating and hockey. And then at the IOC Congress, it said that France would host a separate International Winter Sports Week, and Germany would host this week, but it turned out to be 11 days, of course. The 1924 Olympics were in Germany, France. 250 athletes from 16 nations and 16 events. Finland and Norway won 28 medals each. The first gold medal was won by Charles Jutra of the United States in the 500-meter speed skating. Sonja Henie was 11 years old when she was in the figure skating thing and finished last, but soon did much better. And Gillis Grafström of Sweden won the men's. Germany was banned. And of course, in 1925, because of how good the Winter Games were, the 24 games in Germany were retroactively designated as the first Winter Olympics, and they made it. Now, the second Winter Olympics were held in St. Moritz, Switzerland. And the funny thing was that the opening ceremony was in a blizzard, but there were warm weather conditions that plagued sporting events throughout the rest of the games. And this is before global warming was a big issue. Sonja Henie, at age 15, after her last place finish at the last Winter Games, actually won the figure skating, becoming the youngest Olympic champion for distinction she held till 1998. And where Tara Lipinski won the gold medal in ladies figure skating. Grafström won another figure skating gold, becoming the most decorated men's figure skater to date. No Brian Botano, no Brian Orser, no Elvis Stoico, no Victor Prochenko. Anyhow, the next Winter Games were held in Lake Placid. 17 nations came. And this was awkward because, the Great Depression. A lot of countries didn't compete because of the expensiveness of European nations sending their athletes to the U.S. Remember, things were a whole lot different in the 1930s with travel as they are now. There were only 14 events in 4 sports. The funny thing was that no snow fell for 2 months before the games. And then the snow finally came in mid-January. Sonja Henie won her gold medal in figure skating. Eddie Egan, who was a boxing Olympic champ in 1920, actually took part in bobsled and won the gold medal. So Eddie Egan did his job. And then the German towns of Garmisch and Partenkirchen joined together to organize the 1936 Winter Games and all that. And this was the last time the Summer and Winter Games were held in the same country in the same year. Well, obviously it can't happen now because the Winter and Summer Games don't happen in the same year. So anyway, alpine skiing made its debut. But skiing teachers were barred because they were considered to become professionals. The professionalism problems would always persist in Winter and Summer Games. Anyway, World War II happened. Sapporo was going to get the Winter Olympics in 1940, but because of Japan invading China, they got it stripped. And then it went back to Garmisch, Partenkirchen, Germany. But because of Germany's invasion of Poland, it was canceled. And 1944 was when Italy was supposed to get it, Cortina d'Ampezzo. But anyway, St. Moritz got to host the first post-war games in 1948. Switzerland's neutrality protected the town during World War II. And most of the venues from 1928 were in place, so St. Moritz got it. 28 countries competed, but no Germans or Japanese because of World War II. The problem was that there was a problem because the United States had 2 hockey teams enter in when one thought they were the U.S. Olympic representative. There were problems. So anyway. So the next Olympics were in Oslo, 1952. And the torch relay had 94 people on skis. Norway won the most medals, obviously, because it was their country. Cortina d'Ampezzo was allowed to host the 1956 Olympics, even though that they were supposed to do it in 1944, but it did quite well. All right. Anyway, these were the first Winter Games to be televised in 1956, and the first Olympics broadcast to an international audience. Though no TV rights were sold until the 1960 Summer Olympics. Anyway, Cortina was these games were used to test the feasibility of large sporting events and televising it. The Soviets made its Olympic debut and made an impact, winning more medals than everyone else. Of course, it was about the state-sponsored full-time amateur athlete. All that. And the strange thing was that the IOC would give Squaw Valley the 1960 Olympics, giving America another chance to host it. The only problem is Squaw Valley is in California, and when you think of California, do you think snow? Hell no. It was an undeveloped result in 1955, and then for 5 years they had to have the infrastructure and the venues built at a cost of $80 million, and that is in 1956 dollars. The opening and closing ceremonies were produced by Walt Disney. Squaw Valley had a dedicated athletes village, the first to use a computer to tabulate results, and the first to have female speed skating events. There was no bobsled. It was the only time that there was no bobsled was 1960 because of the cost of building a bobsled. Right. Weird. Well, and I remember the 1960 Olympics were when the United States won gold medal in hockey. Everyone remembers the Miracle on Ice team in 1980, but in 1960, the U.S. shocked everyone by winning the gold medal. They took down Canada and they took down the Czechs. In part, thanks to the Russian captain who motioned for them to get oxygen, and they did. Anyway, Innsbruck was the host in 1964. Unfortunately, warm weather caused a lack of snow during the games, and the Austrian army had to transport snow and ice to sports events. Soviet speed skater Lydia Skobalakova won all 4 female speed skating events, making it 6 gold medals. All that. Luge was contested in 1964, but a competitor was killed in a pre-Olympic training run. Not the first time that would happen. In 1968, in Grenoble, France, where Andre the Giant was built from, the 1968 Winter Olympics were the first to be broadcast in color. There would be 1,100 plus athletes from 37 nations. Jean-Claude Killy won all 3 alpine skiing events: the downhill, the slalom, and the supers. Gee, I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, he got 3 gold medals. The organizing community sold TV rights for $2 million US, which was more than twice the cost of Innsbruck. Venues were spread over long distances for 3 athletes' village, so Grenoble didn't have enough to have it centralized. The organizers claimed this was necessary to accommodate technological advances. However, critics disputed this, saying that, that was not good. You had to centralize it. Yeah. Regardless, the 72 Winter Games in Sapporo, Japan, Sapporo finally getting the Winter Games after missing out in 1940. So Japan was the first non-North American or European city to host the Olympics. But the issue of professionalism was disputed when a number of alpine skiers were found to have participated in a ski camp. And IOC President Avery Brundage threatened to bar the skiers from competing in the games. They were not amateurs because they benefited financially from their status as athletes. Eventually, only Austrian Karl Schwarz was excluded. Everyone else said they were sorry to Brundage. Of course, Brundage was controversial for many other reasons, including kind of being friendly to Hitler in a sense. Also, Jim Fortman that I covered earlier this month Was it jealousy because Thorpe outshined him at the Olympics because he was an Olympic teammate of Thorpe, or it was just racism? I say racism. Canada, of course, had their own issues to deal with. In 72 and 76, they didn't send a hockey team to compete in the Olympics, mostly because of how the Soviets could bring in their so called amateurs to compete and all that. And the weird thing is that a Spaniard by the name of Francisco Fernandez Ochoa won the Olympics ski slalom, making him the only Spanish gold medalist in history, which is weird. You don't think Spain would be good with winter sports. Anyway, 1976, Denver was going to be hosting the Winter Games. 6 years prior, they got the chance to host. It would be great. America would get another Olympics. And it would coincide with Colorado Centennial and the U.S. Bicentennial. But in a weird twist of fate, the people of Colorado actually voted against public funding of the games. And so the IOC basically decided, hey, you know what? Let's get the games to Vancouver. So Vancouver had a chance to host the Winter Games in 1976. However, because the provincial government changed, the administration did not support the Olympic bid. Wow, pathetic. Salt Lake City puts themselves forward for 76. However, the IOC said they would give Innsbruck the 76 games back, mostly because the infrastructure from the 64 games had not been touched. Innsbruck actually accepted the invitation, and within 3 years, they still hosted it. They lit 2 Olympic flames because this was the second time the Austrian town of Innsbruck would host the Winter Games. So yeah, that was weird. 1980, though, Lake Placid got to host the Olympics. I think in a sense that Lake Placid only got the Olympics in 1980, mostly because because it was supposed to go to Denver, but they wanted it in the States. Cyprus made its debut and all that. China and Costa Rica even made their Winter Olympic debut, which was weird. Anyway, the Republic of China, aka Chinese Taipei, refused to attend the games over the IOC's recognition of the People's Republic of China as China. Anyway, Eric Heiden was the superstar. He set an Olympic or world record in every one of the 5 speed skating events he competed in, getting 5 gold medals, smashing the record for most individual golds in a single Olympics. Now, a lot of people say, wait a minute, Mark Spitz won 8 gold medals. Was it 8 or 7? 7, sorry, in 1972. But Spitz won a few in team events, so that doesn't count. Honey Linsell was a superstar. She won the slalom and giant slalom because her nation was the smallest nation to produce an Olympic gold medals, which is Liechtenstein. So it's funny how Liechtenstein got to have a double gold medal winner. Of course, we all know about the American on Ice. The American hockey team made of college players beat the seasoned professionals of the Soviet Union on February 22nd, 1980. I did a video on that last year. The funny thing about that game was it was not broadcast live. It was on tape delay and all that. Regardless of that, it was still profitable for ABC to broadcast it. The great Alan Michaels was the play-by-play guy, and Kent Dryden was the color commentator. Anyhow, of course, the 1980 Olympics kind of got controversial because of the fact of Jimmy Carter refusing to have the Americans compete in the Summer Games in Moscow in 1980. But, of course, his decree would be too late to ban Russia from the Winter Games. He didn't have time. So, of course, there would be some argy-bargy, and would kind of lead to Carter's downfall. So, anyway, in 1984, Sarajevo, in the country formerly known as Yugoslavia, won the games, which was shocking. Sapporo and Gothenburg in Sweden were front runners, but they didn't get it. Everyone was shocked. The games were well organized and not affected by the run-up to the war that engulfed the country 8 years later. Yeah, everyone realized that Yugoslavia was fine for the time being. Anyway, 49 nations would compete. Yugoslavia won its first Olympic medal when alpine skier Yuri Franko won silver in the giant slalom. But of course, 1984 would also be remembered for Torval and Dean's performance of Bolero. I don't know if I did a video on that, but anyway, they got unanimous perfect scores for artistic impression getting the gold medal. It was a fan favorite in England. In 1988, Calgary got the Olympics, so Canada finally got their Olympic medal. It would last 16 days, or 3 weekends. New events were introduced in ski jumping and speed skating. Well, more speed skating events. While future Olympic sports, curling, short track, speed skating, and freestyle skiing were demonstration sports. As you see, curling and all that get into the Olympics. Short track speed skating, which is basically roller derby on ice, as they call it. The speed skating events were held indoors for the first time on Calgary's Olympic Oval, and lots of records were set. All that. Yvonne von Gannep was a superstar for the Dutch, winning 3 gold medals in speed skating, upsetting the East Germans. It was nice for Calgary and all that to get the Olympics. Sadly, though, Canada would again have 0 gold medals in the Olympics they hosted. They did that in the 76 Summer Games in Montreal, like no gold medals. Also in 1988, Matti Niikanen won 3 golds in ski jumping. Alberto Tomba won the giant slalom and slalom, being quite good. Eddie the Eagle Edwards was a ski jumper who somehow qualified for the Olympics for Great Britain. Unfortunately, he failed and actually had a British record of 73 meters in the 90-meter event. Yeah. East German Christa Raffenberger won the women's 1,000 meter speed skating event. And then she would win silver in track cycling in the Summer Olympics, making her the only Olympic athlete to win medals in both summer and winter in the same year. Of course, that can't happen ever again. Also, let's not forget about the Jamaican bobsled team, who somehow got their way into the Olympics and did okay, even though they crashed on their final run. Jamaica was looking good to be in the top 10, but anyway, they failed. But anyway, if you watch Cool Runnings, I recommend it. Anyway, the 92 Winter Games were the last to be held in the same year as the Summer Games, and they would be held in Albertville, and other events would be over the French Savoie region, which was kind of awkward. It's like Albertville is too small to host the full Winter Olympics. But anyway, political changes at the time would reflect it, because this was the first games to be held after the fall of communism and the fall of the Berlin Wall, and Germany competed as a single nation. Croatia and Slovenia, who were former Yugoslavian republics, competed independently. And most of the Soviet republics were called the Unified Team and all that. Anyway, funny fact, New Zealand skier Annelies Koberger was the first Winter Olympic medalist from the Southern Hemisphere when she took silver in the women's slalom. Amazing. Yeah, 92 was weird. But it saw Canadian Caroline Gardner win in the women's downhill, which was a hard event to win. Anyway, the 94 Winter Games were in Lillehammer, and it would be the first games held in a different year than the Summer Games and all that. Lillehammer is the northernmost city to host the Winter Games. So anyway, after the dissolution of Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic and Slovakia made their Olympic debuts. There were some great events in 1994 and all that. Johan Olaf Koss of Norway won 3 gold medals because of his speed skating. Dan Jansen finally won a gold medal after so many failures in the previous Winter Olympics. But the one thing that was basically held was the women's figure skating event, which I talked about in length a couple times. So Kerrigan and Harding. The big problem with that, Harding forcing her way onto the Olympic team because of her, well, stuff. And they both lost to Oksana Bayul of Ukraine. Kerrigan got the silver. But Kerrigan did not like the fact that she got a parade after, even though she got silver. And of course, Kerrigan was upset with the fact that she thought that Bayou was crying because of her makeup. But no, someone forgot to tell Bayou about the time to get onto the ice to accept your gold medal. Regardless, that's what happened. And lots of people tuned in to the women's figure skating events. Meanwhile, in 98, the Japanese city of Nagano got the Winter Games. And the NHL was told that they could send their players to the Winter Games. So many players from different countries could play in the Olympics. Like Canada, US, Sweden, Russia, Finland, and the Czechs, the Big Six, if you will. Ironically, the Czechs won the gold medal thanks to Dominik Hasek's great performances in the semis and finals. The semis by knocking out Canada in the shootout. Canada similarly lost the gold medal in the 94 Olympics to Sweden on a shootout thanks to the Peter Forsberg goal. So, yeah, Hasek shut down Canada and took down Russia 1-0 in the final. Women's ice hockey made its debut, and the U.S. beat Canada for the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Bjorn Dolly won 3 gold medals in Nordic skiing, winning 8 gold medals, making himself the most decorated Winter Olympic athlete. Hermann Maier shocked a lot of people when he actually crashed during the downhill, but he survived and he returned to win gold in the Super G and the giant slalom. Can you imagine that? He had that big crash and then all of a sudden he gets up and wins 2 more gold medals? Wow. Amazing. I liked the 98 opening ceremony with the sumo wrestling and stomping. Akebono did it. Unfortunately, Akebono was not the first choice to take part in the Nagano thing. It was supposed to be Takano Hana, a Japanese favorite, but because Takano Hana got sick, Akebono, despite him being born in Hawaii, he did have Japanese citizenship in a sense. He was allowed to do the stomping ceremony. In 2002, Canada nearly got the gold medal in Quebec City, but Salt Lake City got it. Of course, this was the first Olympics to happen since the 9/11 attacks, which led to lots of security to avoid terrorist attacks. All that. It honored members of the New York Police Department and Fire Department. All that. Of course, the biggest problem with the 2002 Olympics wasn't a controversy within the Olympics. It was outside the Olympics because it was found out that Salt Lake City officials bribed IOC members with food and money and college scholarships for their kids to get the Olympics and all that. And I thought Salt Lake City was clean because of the Mormon faith. Anyway, Canada did win both the men's and women's gold medals. It was amazing to see when I was living on the farm before I moved to Kitchener, my childhood home. Seeing Canada shockingly win the women's gold medal was one thing, and then Canada crushing the Americans 5-2. Like the Americans made it close, but by the third period, Canada was just off and rolling. And Canada finally won a gold medal in hockey, the first time in 50 years in the men's hockey that we won gold. 50 years, can you imagine? Anyway, Canada would have issue, especially with pairs figure skating. The Russian pair, and I'm not going to pronounce their names because I'm going to fuck it up. But anyhow, they compete against our Canadian pair of Selle and Peltier. And it looked good. The Canadians got a good long program set to the theme to Love Story. And the Americans on NBC said we won the competition. CBC with Chris Cuthbert doing figure skating coverage, which is weird, but said we won it. But the Russians won 5-4 in the judges' score. So that means Russia won gold. Everyone was outraged. It was amazing to see the American media be on Canada's side. I think Jay Leno on a show waved a big Canadian flag. Rosie O'Donnell dressed herself in the Canadian outfits from the 2002 um, opening ceremonies and was shocked about Canada being robbed of a gold medal. But there was an investigation that said that the French judge Marie-Reine Legung confessed that she was pressured to give the gold to the Russians. And in return, the Russian judge would actually look favorably on the French enters in the ice dancing competition. If that had happened, why didn't they just stop Russia from having a judge in the ice dancing competition? Regardless of that controversy, they did give Céline Pelletier a duplicate gold. I mean, we should vilify Legung. However, in a sense, she actually made figure skating better because now there's a new judging system based on points. All that. And Australian Stephen Bradbury shocked everyone by winning the 1,000 meter short track speed skating event because there was a big crash at the end, and Bradbury skated on his skates. He began the first gold medals from the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, the 2002 Olympics were kind of good. And then Torino got the 2006 Winter Olympics. South Korean athletes won 10 medals, 6 of them gold in short track speed skating. In the women's cross-country team pursuit, Canadian Sarah Renner broke one of her poles. And the Norwegian coach actually lent her a pole. And Canada won silver, whereas Norway took 4th. But still, that's good sportsmanship and all that. Unfortunately, 2006 was known for Canada's hockey inability. There were 2 venues that hosted the hockey thing. In one venue, Canada was like unbeatable, and the other venue, they couldn't score a goal to save their lives. So that wasn't good. So anyway, then came the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. 2003, it was shocking as an 18-year-old to see Canada get the Olympics for the first time since 1988. With a population of 2.5 million people, Vancouver was the largest metropolitan area to ever host an Winter Olympic Games. But you'd be thinking, wait a minute, what about Tokyo? Tokyo never hosted the Winter Games. It was Nagano and Sapporo, up in northern Japan. Anyway, over 2,500 athletes would come to Vancouver. Sadly, though, the death of a Georgian luger and a training run would ruin it and force the Whistler Sliding Center for Luge and Skeleton to change the track layout. Kind of stupid, don't you think? Well, that's the run. Anyway, Canada finally got a gold medal at the Olympics they hosted. They failed in 76 in Montreal in the Summer Games and the 88 Winter Games in Calgary. Canada crushed everyone, winning 14 gold medals, making them number 1 in gold medal counts. The last host nation to have the most golds was Norway in 1952. Not even the Americans in 1980 did that. That was shocking. Anyway, it also broke the record for most gold medals at a single Winter Olympics by nation. The record was 13 by the 76 Soviets and the 2002 Norwegians. Wow, we did it. We were the best. It was nice to see Alex Bilodeau win the first gold medal for his moguls performance. And it was also great because his older brother Friedrich suffers from cerebral palsy, and it was great to see him there, cheering on his brother. Bilodeau tried to have his brother join him on the podium, but they said, no, can't do that. Pathetic. Regardless, the Russian athletes were not doing so well. Didn't do so well in Vancouver. From 1956 to 2006 in the Winter Olympics, when they've competed, they have never been outside the top 5. But they finished 6th in medals and 11th in gold, which was shocking. President Dmitry Medvedev called for the resignation of top sports officials immediately after the games. Unfortunately, this 2010 disappointment would lead to problems down the road. Trust me. So anyway, and the success of Asian countries was huge and all that. In Vancouver, Asia had won 31 medals with 11 gold. The rise of this was because of the growth of winter sports programs in countries such as Kazakhstan, South Korea, Japan, and China. And a lot of people said that's why the 2018 Winter Olympics went to Asia. Anyway, more on that later. Anyway, in 2014, Sochi, Russia got to be named host city over Salzburg and Pyeongchang. For Pyeongchang, South Korea, this was huge because they kept on being a finalist for Winter Olympics, but they failed miserably. Salzburg, too. Russia finally got their Winter Olympics. The Olympic Village and Stadium were on the Black Sea coast, and all the mountain venues were 50 kilometers away. The games were the most expensive, with an absurd cost of 51 billion American. Anyway, the biggest the Dutch dominated speed skiing events and all that. So it was amazing. A loser by the name of Armin Sugler for Switzerland actually took a bronze, but he got a medal in 6 straight winter games. That's hard to believe. Oh, that's funny. So anyway, Russia topped the medal count with 33 medals and 13 golds. Not enough to catch Canada's 14 golds the previous Olympics, but they still did pretty well. Unfortunately, by 2017, we learned that Russian athletes were in a state-sponsored doping thing, mostly due to the fact that of the shame of Russia doing poorly in Vancouver in 2010. So that really caused a lot of trouble and all that. Russia would not be allowed to be Russia at the Winter Olympics. They would be called the Olympic Athletes of Russia, and basically there would be tight screening on who would be allowed to compete in the Olympics and all that. By the end of 2017, 43 Russian athletes were disqualified, stripping 13 medals and putting Norway as top medal count. However, 9 medals were returned to Russia, so Russia got to first place. So they only lost 4. But in 2011, South Korea finally got their Olympics. Pyeongchang finally got their Olympics, taking down Munich and Annecy, France. Anyhow, South Korea got the Winter Olympics. They hosted the 88 Summer Games in Seoul, but it was nice to see South Korea get something and finally get it. Unfortunately, the Russian doping scandal ruined things, all that. Despite that, the Russians did win the gold medal in hockey, and all that, which was kind of weird, all that. Of course, Canada sucked at the Olympics, despite the fact we had no professionals, because 2018 they said we're not going to have any professionals. No NHL player was allowed to compete. And it hurt Canada as they sent some minor pro stars and some former NHLers. And Canada shockingly lost in the semifinals to Germany. Of all countries, it was Germany. Okay, you lose to Russia or the United States. Or Sweden or Finland. No big deal. But we lose to Germany? Well, Russia won the gold, but still, I'm not too happy with that. However, despite North and South Korea having tensions and all that, North Korea wanted to participate in the games, so they actually entered with South Korea as a unified Korea during the opening ceremony, but at the Olympics they would be separate countries. The games saw the addition of big air snowboarding, fast start speed skating. Didn't know that was there. Mixed doubles curling and mixed team alpine skiing to the program. So anyway, it was amazing and all that. Noriaki Kasai of Japan competed in his 8th Winter Olympics, which was amazing. Norway would end up being number 1 with 39. Germany took 2nd with 31. Canada took 3rd with 29 medals. South Korea actually won 17 medals, which was pretty good, and 5 golds. So Beijing gets to host these Winter Olympics, but they're ruined by COVID. I don't know how COVID's going to take a hold of things. Beijing will become the first city to host the Summer and Winter Olympics because they hosted the 2008 Summer Olympics. In 2026, Milan Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo will share the Olympics. So Italy will get their Olympics. Cortina will have the Olympics for the first time in 7 decades. So, of course, 2030, we don't know who's going to get the 2030 or 2034 Olympics, Winter Olympics, and all that. I'm just going to take a quick gander at that and see about, before I talk about controversies. 2030, it's either going to be this year or next year that they'll tell. There's a waiting process. So right now, Vancouver and Sapporo are the front runners for the Winter Games in 2030. So Canada might get another Winter Games. So we'll see about that. So yeah, so Vancouver, Sapporo, and Barcelona Pyrenees are the main guys. So Vancouver could get the Olympics. That'll be nice. Sapporo trying to get the Winter Olympics for the second time. They did in 1972 in Barcelona. It'll be funny to see Barcelona because then they'll be the second city to host the Summer and Winter Olympics. There are some potential bids from Salt Lake City, Schmalkalden, Germany, Liev, Ukraine, Georgia, the country of Georgia once went. Kazakhstan wants to be a potential bid in Savoy, France. 2034, we don't know about. Anyhow, there are some controversies and all that, especially with Salt Lake City, with the gifts I kind of said and all that. But there were things. The Japanese organizing committee did so too, giving gifts to IC members for Knuckles bid in 98. So the host city legacy is not as bad as it is in the Summer Games, but there's a lot of issues and all that. So yeah, there have been some doping problems, especially that the Cold War had an effect on the Winter Games. Not really a lot of boycotts in the Winter Games other than the Summer Games. So you will see current events: alpine skiing, biathlon, bobsled, cross-country skiing, curling, figure skating, freestyle skating, ice hockey, luge, Nordic confined, short track speed skating, skeleton, ski jumping, snowboarding, and speed skating. And the all-time record, of course, Norway's number 1 in medals. Number of occurrences. Norway has won the Winter Olympics medal table 8 times. The Americans have only done it once. That's unbelievable. The Americans, for how dominant they seem to be in the Summer Games. In the Winter Games, they've only had the medals rostrum be number 1. That was 1932. Of all things. Wow. Canada had it once in 2010. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, Beijing gets these Olympics, and then Milan gets the next one. So, joyous times should be high. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.